Now, plagued by terror attacks and security concerns, Russia tries to perform business as usual in anticipation of the upcoming Sochi Olympics. But a new video revealed yesterday by a radical Islamist group taking responsibility for the bombings in Volgograd late last December adds to already existing concerns as members of the group threaten Vladimir Putin and the tourists anticipated in Sochi with further bloodshed. To further discuss this issue, we're joined in studio by journalist and political analyst Inna Lazareva. Inna, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And before we take a look at this, let's actually take a look at the following report.
An Islamist group in Russia's North Caucasus released a video claiming responsibility for the December twin suicide bombings that killed at least 34 people in Volgograd. In the video posted on a well-known jihadi forum, two men warned President Vladimir Putin of further attacks at next month's Sochi Winter Olympics.
If you hold the Olympics, you will receive a present from us. It will be for all the Muslim blood that is shed every day around the world, be it Afghanistan, Somalia, Syria, all over the world. This will be a revenge.
The two men in the video are believed to have carried out the attacks on behalf of a group known as Vilayat Dagestan, which is allegedly linked to an Iraqi group called Ansar al-Sunnah. Dagestan is in Russia's North Caucasus, where militants are waging an insurgency to create an Islamic state. The Sochi Olympics represent a decisive landmark for President Putin. The Games are intended to show how far Russia has come since the collapse of the Soviet Union, especially under Putin's rule.
We're also joined from Moscow by i-24 News Moscow correspondent Ilan Golan. Ilan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Yael.
Now, we're also hearing news over the course of the last 24 hours that Russian security forces are supposedly searching Sochi for a suspected terrorist already who is feared to be planning to target the Olympic Games, supposedly the Black Widow.
Yeah, I mean, a report by NBC News and other sources about 4 Black Widows, the so-called widows, women whose husbands were killed through fighting against Russian security forces, and one of them called Salima, known as Salima or Rozana Ibrahimova, is alleged to making her way from Dagestan, which is 1,500 kilometers away from Sochi in the North Caucasus, to Sochi. I mean, I have to say, I mean, this is a pretty interesting, weird description of this woman, a 22-year-old widow of an Islamic militant, a woman who has a limp in her right leg, a left arm that doesn't bend at the elbow, and a 4-inch scar on her cheek. How can she blend in? I mean,
yeah, but you know, people said the same thing about bin Laden. You know, a very tall man connected to dialysis. I'm not kidding. That was always the call. But it's this type of picture that is being circulated, and then the video that came out yesterday of the suspected terrorists who carried out the Volgograd bombings. What are the reactions on the ground in Russia? Because this seems to be taking, you know, more dangerous spins.
Well, officially, we haven't heard from the anti-terrorist committee, the organization that is in charge of fighting terrorism in Russia. It is a pretty weird, again, a pretty interesting and bizarre twist of events in terms of information, because these two men, known as Abdurrahman and Suleiman, are not, again, they are apparently not the man who was identified as the person who carried out the attack, and a convert, a Russian, ethnic Russian convert to Islam by the name of Pavel Pechechkin. No one knows whether they're actually members of this organization called Vilayat Dagestan, or is it just a name that they adopted for this video? Does it have any connections with Ansar al-Sunnah from Iraq? Some Russian commentators have gone as far to say that this has something to do with the Geneva II conference on Syria, which is due to take place tomorrow, because some elements, perhaps Saudi elements, are trying to signal to the Russians that they shouldn't continue support Bashar al-Assad because they might pay a price in terms of terrorist acts inside Russia. Again, a pretty bizarre video that surfaced yesterday.
Now, Ilan, stay with us. Inna Lazareva, you know the region fairly well, but it's a video as such that actually, as Ilan said, is very bizarre, but it does address the Sochi Olympics. And the Americans are now actually saying that they have military plans to protect American or athletes in general in Sochi. How dangerous is this getting, or is this just basically a play for all?
Well, the threat has been there since July. The concrete threat towards Sochi Olympics has been declared in July 2013 by Dr. Umarov, the so-called emir of the North Caucasus, who said, if you hold this, you're gonna be in deep trouble. The Americans, yes, are panicking, as are many other nations. But we must remember, this is not something new. This has not been going on just for the past year, not for the past decades, but actually for centuries. This conflict between the North Caucasus and Russia has been in place since the 18th century, and mainly driven by the fact that North Caucasus do not want to be governed by Russia.
But an event like the Sochi Olympics, when Putin says that there's a ring of steel or a ring of security around Sochi, is this different than the usual security there? Or,
Yes.
what do they have to do to protect? Because it's, quote unquote, it's a terrible thing to say. It's a wonderful opportunity for militants, terrorists, and your garden variety crazy people to, make their claims.
Well, the Russian security forces are going all out. There's alongside the police, the army, and intelligence services around. They've also actually closed down some of the mosques. They've prevented some schools from operating. They've sort of intimidated the local spiritual leaders, which is also made the situation even worse, because there's even more grievances than usual now.
And in that respect, Ilan Goran still with us from Moscow. How important are these Olympics to President Putin?
These are the all-important Olympic Games. This man has staked his personal brand name on these games. We must remember that in 2007 he actually traveled to Guatemala to try and persuade delegates, the International Olympic Committee, that Russia can pull this. And not only pull this, this would be, they promised, the most secured Olympic Games of history, and apparently also the most expensive. We just heard this week that, from a member of the International Olympic Committee claiming that at least a third of the $50 billion allocated to the preparations were basically siphoned off through corruption and waste. Vladimir Putin brushes all this aside because he has taken all his personal, basically all of his stakes are on these games. He will be there for the opening ceremony. He will be there for some of the finals, hopefully, where Russian athletes will be. He wants the world to see that the new Russia can basically pull out this thing and make it, in his worldview at least, the best games ever.
Right, but then when the Americans though are saying, and that's all over the news, that they're gonna, they're bringing 2 vessels to the back sea. They're gonna steer. How does that make Putin look?
Well, he's worried about how he looks. It's also Putin's feelings, because of course Americans on Russian territory, are they going to share intelligence much more? The 2 former rivals in that sense. But you're right in the sense that this is the scale of these games is absolutely enormous. It's the most expensive Olympic Games on the planet. And then you have to ask the question, why Sochi? Why on earth are Winter Olympics being held in a place that's known as a sort of a beach resort most of the time? The average temperature in wintertime in Sochi is 10 degrees. There's little snow around. Add that to the fact that the political situation is so difficult, the economic situation, the amount of money that's being poured into these Olympic Games, whilst the rest of the population lives in absolute poverty. It's one of the most neglected regions under Russian influence. It's the whole thing looks rather strange.
Then why Sochi, really? Just out on theory.
Why Sochi? Well, Putin came to power in 2000. He came to power under the ticket of having launched the second war in Chechnya, trying to quell this uprising in the North Caucasus. He even circulated his helicopter around to sort of emphasize his influence. So it's a big ticket for him. So he wants to show the world that he made things safer, but it may just backfire. We'll see.
Okay. Inna Lazareva, thank you so much for joining us. Ilan Goran from Moscow, always a pleasure to have you with us. And when we get back, Ukraine's capital remains in a tense standoff following clashes between anti-government protesters and police that left dozens